The galaxy was a vast tapestry of light and shadow, of infinite wonders and lurking dangers. Among countless stars and planets, civilizations rose and fell like waves on a cosmic ocean, some reaching heights beyond imagining, others vanishing into silence. Among the mightiest of these was the Galactic Council, a coalition of species so ancient and wise they had woven themselves into the very fabric of the cosmos. Their role was to maintain order, balance, and peace across the swirling galaxies, to guide and govern the countless worlds that spun beneath their watchful eyes. But in this vast assembly, there was one species they did not understand, one species they did not trust, one species they feared: humans. It began on Earth, a blue gem circling a warm star, filled with chaos, beauty, and unyielding life. Humans were born into struggle. Their history was written in fire and blood. They fought endless wars, not just against each other, but against the very elements, the wild creatures that stalked their lands, and the cold emptiness of space that beckoned with danger and promise. When humankind finally lifted their eyes beyond the sky, they did not do so quietly. Their first steps among the stars were marked with thunder, testaments to their stubborn will to survive, to conquer, and to thrive. Colonies were established on barren moons and hostile worlds. Ships blasted through asteroid belts with reckless courage. When other species met humans in the void, they found something unlike anything else, a species that never retreated, never yielded, and never accepted defeat. The Galactic Council watched. They watched as humanity's fleets grew bolder, pushing into sectors that had been peaceful for millennia. They saw how humans engineered technology both awe-inspiring and terrifying, weapons that could vaporize entire fleets, defenses that bent light itself, and ships capable of outrunning threats that had long stalked the stars. But it was not just technology that unsettled the Council. It was humanity's spirit, a force of nature, unpredictable, chaotic, brilliant. Tensions escalated when humans clashed with neighboring empires. Diplomatic envoys were sent, then recalled. Warnings were ignored. Battles erupted, swift and brutal, echoing with the cries of a species that refused to be tamed. At the heart of the council chambers, debate raged. Some argued for peace, for understanding. Others called for containment. For humanity, they decided, was a virus, wild, dangerous, and on the verge of upsetting the cosmic order. And so, the sentence was passed. To protect the galaxy, humanity would be locked away. Not with chains or prison walls, but with barriers woven from laws, technology, and cosmic forces beyond mortal understanding. Star systems where humans lived were quarantined. Warp corridors were sealed, communication blackouts enforced. Humanity became an exile race, trapped behind invisible walls, left to rot in silence. But confinement did not kill them. If anything, it ignited something far more powerful. Cut off from the galactic network, humans turned inward. They looked to each other, to their history, to the indomitable spark that had carried them through millennia of hardship. In the darkness of isolation, humanity's collective will burned brighter than ever. Deep beneath the surface of once vibrant worlds, secret projects began. Fleets built in silence, minds trained to endure, technologies crafted not for war, but for rebirth. Humans began to evolve, biologically, mentally, spiritually. It was not enough to survive. They vowed to transcend. Among those hidden voices was Kaelen, a child of exile, born on a forgotten colony where the light of Earth was but a distant memory. He had never known freedom, only the cold grip of the cage. But in his veins ran the fire of rebellion, the promise of a future not dictated by fear or walls. Kaelen grew up listening to stories, tales of Earth's blue skies, of stars that burned with possibility, and of a humanity that once dared to dream without limits. Now he was part of something greater, the Synapse Network, a web of minds connected beyond flesh and blood. Through this network, humanity shared thoughts, memories, emotions, becoming a single organism with countless hearts. Here knowledge flowed faster than light. Here innovation thrived. Here humanity was no longer fragmented but whole. But the galaxy outside remained unaware. Outside the cage, the Council believed humanity was fading into irrelevance. A threat diminished. But inside the cage, something was awakening. The fire was not just burning, it was roaring. The question no one dared to ask was not if humanity would break free. It was when. And so the stage was set. The cage was not just a prison. It was a crucible, forging a new species ready to shatter the stars. The cage may have been built by others, but humanity refused to be defined by its walls. In the vast silence where once 100 civilizations thrived, human colonies flickered like hidden flames, small, isolated, but fiercely alive. These worlds, forgotten by the Galactic Council, became sanctuaries for a people who refused surrender. Inside these enclaves, the very air seemed charged with purpose. Every breath taken was a vow, an unspoken promise whispered across generations. We will rise again. On one such world, a sprawling desert planet called LSR Prime, Kaelen walked beneath twin suns that beat down mercilessly on cracked Earth. Here, where no starship dared to linger openly, humanity rebuilt its future in secret. The cities of LSR Prime rose like mirages, gleaming domes and towering spires shielding life from the harsh environment. Within the shadows of these structures, scientists and warriors worked side by side, bound by a single goal: transcendence. Kaelen's footsteps echoed down the corridors of the synapse core, the heart of human evolution. Here, beneath layers of reinforced crystal and quantum shields, a network unlike any other thrummed with life. The synapse was no ordinary technology. It was a living web, a neural lattice linking millions of minds, weaving consciousnesses into one. As Kaelen connected himself to the synapse, a cascade of sensations overwhelmed him. The combined hopes, fears, memories, and dreams of billions flooding through his awareness. He was no longer just an individual. He was part of a collective, a singular mind with infinite facets. The synapse was humanity's answer to isolation, a means to break through the walls that surrounded them. But it was more than survival. It was evolution. Through it, they shared knowledge with a speed impossible for physical communication. New ideas blossomed like supernovae, fueling breakthroughs in biology, technology, and even perception itself. Across the network, minds experimented with the very fabric of existence. Some learned to manipulate gravity, bending it like light through a prism. Others tapped into quantum entanglement, sending thoughts across vast distances instantaneously. A select few pushed further, tapping into the energy of the void, forging new forms of life from stardust and memory. The synapse also reshaped humanity's biology. No longer bound by fragile flesh alone, many chose to transcend their physical forms. They became beings of pure energy, of thought and light. Some uploaded their consciousness into vast starships, becoming living vessels capable of bending space. Others merged with the planet itself, their awareness stretching deep into the core. Yet not all embraced this change immediately. There were debates, arguments that raged within the network's depths. What did it mean to be human if one abandoned their body? Was identity tied to flesh or thought? Was there a line humanity should not cross? Kaelen often pondered these questions. He remembered his mother's voice, warm and resolute, telling stories of the earth she barely knew. To be human, she said, is to fight for hope, to carry the fire no matter how dark the night. That fire burned fiercely within Kaelen, and as he looked to the stars beyond the cage, flickering like distant promises, he vowed humanity would not only survive, it would become something new. Meanwhile, beyond the walls of their exile, the Galactic Council began to stir. Rumors of the synapse spread through their ranks, whispers of a human power growing unchecked. To the Council's leaders, it was an abomination, a threat to the order they had so carefully crafted. But the galaxy was changing. Old alliances crumbled, new dangers emerged from the dark spaces between stars, and in the heart of this chaos, humanity was preparing to shatter the cage once and for all. The synapse was more than just a network of minds. It was a living, breathing organism, pulsing with the hopes and fears of every human connected. Across the hidden worlds of exile, this web grew stronger, more intricate, resonating like a cosmic heartbeat. It was this resonance that began to ripple outward, a signal, faint yet unmistakable, cutting through the dark silence of the void. Kaelen stood at the edge of a colossal observation deck, gazing at the distant stars. Beyond them lay the cages, the walls of the Galactic Council, the prisons of humanity's past. But tonight something was different. The resonance thrummed beneath his feet, vibrating through the very ground of LSR Prime. In the depths of the synapse core, scientists and philosophers alike gathered, monitoring this strange wave. It was not just energy or sound, but something more profound, a call to awakening. The resonance carried memories, fragments of Earth's lost history, echoes of ancient human dreams, and visions of a future unbound. Some believed it was a message from their ancestors, woven into the quantum fabric of space-time itself. Others whispered that it was the synapse evolving, becoming sentient, reaching out across the cosmos to reclaim what was lost. Whatever the truth, it was clear. Humanity's time was coming. The resonance stirred something deep within Kaelen, a surge of determination and clarity. He felt as though the collective will of billions was converging inside him, fueling a fire that could not be extinguished. But the Galactic Council would not ignore this awakening. In a grand chamber aboard their flagship, the Council's leaders convened. Tall, imposing figures from diverse species debated heatedly. "The humans grow beyond our control," said one elder, her voice cold and measured. "They threaten the balance of the galaxy," warned another. Plans were drafted, new barriers, harsher sanctions, and covert operations to cripple the synapse. They underestimated one thing: the humans were ready. On a remote moon, hidden from prying eyes, Kaelen and a band of elite operatives prepared their fleet. Ships, forged in secret, gleamed with weapons and shields far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. But their true power lay not in firepower alone. It lay in unity. Connected through the synapse, their minds moved as one, anticipating, adapting, and evolving in real time. Each pilot was a node in a vast web of strategy and instinct. Kaelen's voice echoed through the comms, calm but resolute. "Tonight, we strike not just to break our chains, but to remind the galaxy, humanity will not be forgotten." As the fleet slipped through hidden warp corridors, the resonance pulsed stronger, guiding them toward their destiny. Back on Lira Prime, families gathered, eyes turned skyward. Children born into exile dreamed of stars they had never touched. They sang songs of rebellion and hope, their voices rising in unison, a chorus that echoed across the void. The galaxy held its breath. The night was heavy with anticipation. Across the hidden worlds of exile, human fleets prepared to breach the walls that had held them captive for generations. Kaelen stood at the command deck of the flagship Elysium's Dawn, the hum of the synapse thrumming through every panel, every control, every heartbeat. Around him, the faces of those who had spent their lives in the shadows reflected a mixture of hope, fear, and fierce determination. "This is more than a battle," Kaelen said, voice steady. "It is a reclaiming of our right to exist, to thrive, and to shape our own destiny. Tonight, we break the silence." Outside, stars streaked past as the fleet slipped through the last of the sealed warp corridors, emerging on the far side of the Council's quarantine zone. The black void stretched before them, endless, indifferent, but no longer impenetrable. The Council's barriers shimmered, ancient and vast, a lattice of energy and laws designed to contain the wild human threat. But the synapse's collective knowledge had discovered a weakness, a flaw hidden deep within the quantum layers. One by one, human ships phased through the barriers, slipping silently into open space. The first breach was met with sudden shock from the Council's patrols, but it was too late. A coordinated strike unfolded. The humans did not come to negotiate or plead. They came to remind the galaxy that they were a force born of chaos and unbreakable will. In the cold vacuum, dogfights erupted with furious intensity. The sleek, energy-infused vessels darted and weaved with an uncanny synchronicity, their pilots anticipating every move as if sharing a single mind. The Council's fleets fought back with ruthless precision, deploying devastating weapons and maneuvering with centuries of experience. But against humanity's raw ingenuity and unity, their attacks faltered. Kaelen's voice rang through the comms, steady and inspiring. "Remember who we are. We are the fire in the dark, the storm beneath the stars. They locked us away because they feared what we could become. Let them see that fear is justified." Explosions blossomed in the void. Starships erupted in pillars of light and debris. Yet humanity's advance was relentless. Meanwhile, far from the battlefield, on Lira Prime and other colonies, the people watched with bated breath. Every victory sent ripples of hope across the network, fueling the synapse and strengthening the bonds that held humanity together. Among the fiercest warriors was Lira, a pilot born into exile, her hands steady as she commanded her craft with lethal grace. To her, the fight was personal. Every system they reclaimed was a step closer to freedom, to a future where humanity could rise without chains. The battle raged on for hours, each side pushing to the limits of endurance. But as the synapse amplified human coordination, the tide slowly turned. In a daring maneuver, Kaelen led a strike team deep into the heart of the quarantine zone, targeting the core of the Council's control grid. It was a fortress of light and energy, heavily guarded by fleets and automated defenses. Yet, through precision and sacrifice, the human team penetrated its defenses. With a burst of focused energy, they shattered the core's control systems, sending shockwaves through the barrier. The walls began to crumble. As the cage faltered, a wave of exhilaration surged through every connected mind in the synapse. Freedom was no longer a distant dream. It was within reach. But the battle was far from over. The galaxy had witnessed the first crack in the cage, and many would come to stop humanity's rise. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Across the expanse of stars and void, a single truth echoed. Humanity was no longer a cage-bound prisoner, but a force awakening, roaring against the silence of exile. The remnants of the Galactic Council's fleet swirled in chaotic desperation, scrambling to contain the human armada that had slipped through the weakened barriers. They were powerful, yes, but old. Their fleets bore the scars of countless wars, their tactics honed by centuries of discipline and tradition. But humanity was something else entirely. On the bridge of the flagship Elysium's Dawn, Kaelen stood with eyes ablaze, hands steady on the controls. Around him, the synapse pulsed like a living heart, sinking every pilot, every soldier, every thinker into a single, relentless organism. "Fleet," Kaelen spoke, voice clear and commanding, "this is our moment. Every chain broken, every wall shattered brings us closer to the future we choose. Remember your training, your spirit, your unyielding will. We are not just fighting for survival, we are fighting to redefine what it means to be human." His words rippled through the network, carried by the minds of thousands of ships, weaving through the starfield like a song of war and hope. The battle erupted with renewed fury. Energy beams tore across the darkness, starships danced through the void with terrifying grace, and the cold silence of space shattered beneath the thunder of combat. Lira's fighter weaved through enemy fire, her every move perfectly synchronized with the fleet's collective will. Her mind was sharp, her body calm. The synapse had made her more than a pilot. She was a blade in the storm. Ahead, the Council's flagship, the Ascendant, glowed like a beacon of defiance, its shields pulsing with ancient energy, designed to repel even the most devastating attacks. Kaelen knew that the key to victory lay in taking down the Ascendant. It was the heart of the Council's power, the source of their control grid that maintained the quarantine barriers across countless systems. He issued the order, and a strike force of elite pilots surged forward, guided by the synapse to target the flagship's weak points with precision strikes. The battle was brutal. Explosions rocked the void as fighters collided, and starships were torn apart in bursts of light and metal. On the Ascendant, Council leaders watched with mounting dread. Their arrogance had led them to believe humanity could be contained. Now they faced the full force of a species forged in adversity and unity. One elder, a tall figure with silver skin and eyes like molten gold, addressed the command room. "We must unleash the final protocol," she said grimly. "If humanity cannot be contained by walls, then we will erase their existence." The Council's secret weapon was a galaxy-shattering device, hidden deep within the Ascendant, a weapon capable of collapsing star systems and wiping out entire fleets with a single pulse. But the humans had anticipated this. Kaelen and his strike team, racing against time, maneuvered through the fiercest defenses to reach the core of the Ascendant. With every moment, the stakes grew higher. The synapse burned within them, a beacon of hope and power. Kaelen felt the weight of countless lives on his shoulders, but also the fire of generations past urging him forward. As the team breached the inner sanctum, they faced the weapon's guardians, automatons forged from living metal and powered by ancient technology. A brutal close-quarters fight ensued, steel clashing against energy blades, raw determination against cold precision. Lira fought alongside Kaelen, their movements seamless, a dance of survival and defiance. Finally, they reached the weapons control core. Kaelen's hands moved quickly, bypassing complex security locks and hacking into the device's systems. With a roar of triumph, he initiated a chain reaction designed to overload the weapon, turning the Council's greatest power against itself. Alarms blared. The Ascendant shook violently. Outside, the human fleet pressed their attack, pushing the Council's forces to the brink of collapse. The final pulse surged through the Ascendant, and with a blinding flash, the weapon detonated from within, its destruction echoing across the void. Shields shattered, systems failed, and the flagship began to break apart. As the Council's grip faltered, quarantine barriers collapsed, and star systems long locked away flickered to life. Human colonies reached out across the galaxy, reconnecting through the synapse, their voices rising in celebration. But the victory came at a cost. Many brave souls had fallen, lives sacrificed to shatter the cage. Kaelen stood among the wreckage, battered but unbroken. He gazed toward the stars now open before them, not as prisoners but as pioneers. "We are free," he whispered. Yet freedom was only the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same. And neither would humanity. The cage had shattered, but the echoes of its bars still lingered in the air. Humanity stood at the dawn of a new era, free from chains, but facing a galaxy that was anything but welcoming. On Elissa Prime, Kaelen watched the twin suns rise over the horizon, their light painting the red sands with hues of gold and fire. Beside him, Lira rested, her eyes weary but alive, a warrior who had seen both the depths of captivity and the heights of freedom. "Do you think they'll come after us again?" she asked quietly, voice soft but steady. Kaelen shook his head. "They might try. The galaxy fears change, but we've shown them something they couldn't control: human resilience." Across the newly freed systems, colonies began to rebuild, reconnect, and thrive. Communities once isolated by force now shared knowledge, culture, and hope through the synapse, humanity's greatest gift and weapon. Yet, with freedom came responsibility. The galaxy was a vast, tangled web of alliances, rivalries, and histories. The Council's old order was gone, but the vacuum they left invited new challenges. Kaelen understood that the true fight was just beginning, not for survival, but for acceptance and a place among the stars. He reached out through the synapse, feeling the pulse of billions of voices, young and old, hopeful and cautious. Together they would build a future not defined by fear or exile, but by unity and purpose. In the deep silence of space, humanity's song began to rise, fierce, proud, and unyielding. They were no longer prisoners of the past. They were the architects of the new dawn. And this time, no one would lock them away again.